So this is the edition of Friday, the 21st of January 2022. So this is timed at 23:55 GMT on Friday, the 21st of January 2022, but it's a few minutes late, or 7 minutes late. It's 0002 hours GMT, which is 7 minutes behind the stated schedule time, but this is the one that is to be deemed as being broadcast as 23:55 hours GMT, which is 11:55 p.m. on Friday, the 21st of January 2022. Now, this is the financial times of today, that is Friday, the 21st of January 2022. And it has got two letters that we want to concentrate on. One is the second letter in the Financial Times by somebody who is pretending to be a German. Now, anyone who knows about the kind of condemnation by the Brexiteers against the Germans during the 5 years or so of the kind of tussle over Brexit would remember that the main condemnation by the Brexiteers about the European Union membership was directed at Germany. And after Germany, it was France. So it is very significant that in the last, let's say 78 hours, two so-called letters from so-called Germans have been published that are absolutely, unbelievably pro-Brexit and pro-Boris Johnson. Nobody in the whole world, except these two strange so-called German praisers of Boris Johnson, would agree with them. So, first of all, why are they writing this letter? And this is completely kind of unfounded praise for Boris Johnson. Because this letter is not about the rule and the law that was broken by the parties. This is a stupid letter. The second one, this one is by somebody called Gunnar Plague. Plague sounds like a plague, like a disease, but it's not spelled as a disease. It says that had the people who did the parties, if they had abstained, I mean, it's not clear as to what they mean by abstained. The point is that the rule that they broke was the rule about staying in, not going out to parties. So abstain is not appropriate, really. And it says, doesn't a leadership team that is on call for all our sakes 24/7 for 365 days a year deserve a glass of wine once a while in the garden? This is a completely stupid, moronic, idiotic, rubbish, illogical rubbish. You will find the other letter, the previous letter, which is from a so-called count, German count. And that too is in praise of Boris Johnson. Was it, that was yesterday's Financial Times, I think. Okay, so this one, we shall not go into any more of that except to say that this is not the representative view about the people who have been expressing opinions about Johnson. And during the day, Friday, I think it was on the morning of Friday, the 21st of January 2022, that Rory Stewart, who was a member of parliament before he lost because of the Brexiteering domination of the and takeover of the Conservative Party. He gave a statement that has been kind of included in the trending in the Twitter during the day. He gave a statement to Sky News and has been followed up. Rory Stewart has been praised by other Twitter kind of persons tweeting. And in that, he actually condemned Boris Johnson and said that he was absolutely the wrong person to be made leader of the Conservative Party. I'm just looking for the edition of the Financial Times that has the other letter from the other German. And as I said, this is probably a kind of diplomatic kind of maneuver to make Boris Johnson kind of appear recognized and appreciated. What that purpose is not clear, but that is one of the possible motivations behind the two letters from two Germans. So I don't think this is the right Financial Times that contains that other letter, but I'm sure that that other letter would be found somewhere. This is the one on the, this is dated the 17th. So it's not the German that actually praises Johnson. Now, the other papers today, that is Friday, are of course disagreeing with the German's letter in the Financial Times today. For example, the I newspaper, which is part of the Brexiteering Daily Mail, has to record the evidence. And the evidence is that Tory civil war over future of Johnson. So it's not a anti-conservative. It's a paper that is controlled by the conservatives, the Brexiteers. And it says that Prime Minister's position precarious. It's not a conditional, hesitant description. It's a straightforward word, precarious. And it connects the precariousness of Johnson's position with conservative rebels regrouping ahead of Sue Gray report into number 10 Downing Street. And in the last 12 hours or so, the Guardian has been running or has run a piece about the anti-Boris Johnson group of MPs, demanding that Johnson does not suppress the evidence that Sue Gray may report. And there is a piece about Theresa May, which is headed Theresa May, without the T, of course. So May enjoying Prime Minister's struggle, but worries about impact of crisis. That reference to impact is to the Conservative Party. So it says, Theresa May will be enjoying seeing Boris Johnson struggle to maintain his grip on power, but she has wider concerns over the lack of focus on more serious issues facing the country, some allies have said. The former Prime Minister, Theresa May, that is, has remained silent throughout this week's drama, in which Mr. Johnson has battled to see off a bid to topple him from various factions of the Tory party. But one of her closest allies insisted that Mrs. May will not be indulging in too much Schadenfreude. Now, that is a German word. Now, the heading in the Financial Times contains the word idiom. But that's not really relevant because the letter is stupid. Anyway, the Schadenfreude means that seeing somebody else's suffering, enjoyment at observing the suffering of somebody else, that applies to the equation between Theresa May and Boris Johnson. But there is a problem when number 10 is confused, consumed by a crisis, because all he tries to do is solve that crisis and not deal with everything else it should be focusing on. That means the problems with rising energy prices, or whether schools are getting enough funding, all of those things fall by the wayside. Mrs. Theresa May has not been afraid to criticize her successor, accusing him of abandoning the UK's position of moral global leadership. When he threatened to break international law during the Brexit negotiations, she also accused him of turning his back on the poorest in the world, following his decision to cut international aid payments. Mrs. May declined to comment. Now, let's go back to what we do. We do this world exclusive diagnosis of Fleet Street. The Fleet Street newspapers, also known as the British newspaper, the main newspapers, etc., etc. And we do the diagnosis regardless of party or party agenda or party alliances of any description. It is solely based on objective standards and morality, objective ethics and due process, and transparency and accountability, and fairness and independence. And you can go along and find other kind of values that we observe and uphold. Now, the point about Theresa May and the praise of her that I referred to is the point that she'll come to in a minute. The point about Theresa May is that she is being referred to in the I newspaper as being kind of more serious, more sanguine, and more fair to her successor, that is Boris Johnson, who is struggling, and she must be enjoying it. But she won't interfere any more kind of directly than has been implied. Okay, so going back to the lying letter in the financial crimes by a so-called German. This is the Daily Mirror, which is not holding its condemnation of Boris Johnson. The lowest of the low. That is how the Daily Mirror of Friday, 21st of January 2022 is describing Boris Johnson's behavior. There is no mystery as to what they think. They're calling him the lowest of the low. And this is consistent with the view that most people that have been consulted or polled have about Boris Johnson. And he's being described as a thug on the inside pages of the Daily Mirror. This is the mob. He is the mob gangster. And they're saying that Johnson is blackmailing MPs so that they should support the Johnson's career. 76% of the people polled say that Johnson is dishonest. And there is this piece by Jason Beatty, who says that dirty tricks are beyond politics, usual dark arts. Now, what they're doing, the supporters of Johnson, are indulging in dirty tricks to undermine Johnson's critics and opponents. And also cash for poor towns to be blocked over free school meal vote. So there is absolutely everything is said about Boris Johnson based on facts of his behavior. And the editorial on page 8 of the Daily Mirror of Friday the 21st of January 2022 is headed "The Prime Mobster." He is the prime thug, he is the main thug, he is the main gangster. Every day, Boris Johnson stays in Downing Street he heaps more shame on the highest elected office in the country, as if his falsehoods and disregard for the rules were not bad enough. It is now alleged he has taken to blackmailing MPs. According to the Tory MP William Ragg, backbenchers who were reluctant to support Johnson over Partygate were threatened with the loss of constituency funding on being smeared in the media. Mr. Ragg is so appalled by these heavy handed tactics that he has urged his colleagues to report them to the police. The Prime Minister's claim he was not aware of such practices is as implausible as his claim that nobody told him the parties in number 10 were illegal. He should be governing for the whole country. Instead, he seems to be using public funds as the tools of extortion. If Johnson is allocating public money to buy the loyalty of an MP whose support he needs to stay in office, that is the behavior not of a prime minister, but of a mobster. He's a gangster. So this is not something that has been written by somebody that doesn't recognize the achievements of Boris Johnson. This is written by people who care about the country and care about the loss of service to society and democracy. And this is something that will be said more often. And here is a 2-page spread in the Mirror of Friday, 21st of January 2022, about the footballer George Best's widow, who says that she's haunted by his image, that he visits her. And there are other pieces that we shall go over if we can. If we have the time. So this is the other one on the blackmailing or dirty tricks by Boris Johnson, threatening those MPs who are calling for him to resign because he's unfit. So it says Tories using dirty tricks. No, again, Tories using dirty tactics to get MPs to back Johnson. Now that's on the front page of the Guardian. 21st, Friday the 21st of January 2022. And there is the second piece, domestic piece about Johnson's ministers in row with National Health Service on surgery backlog. The third piece is about Russia and the speculated threat to invade Ukraine. Invasion that has been attributed or ascribed to Vladimir Putin. And there is a package on pages 6 and 7 of the Guardian, which is headed "Whips Blackmail MPs Using Public Money to Win Votes for Johnson." Now, to those who are not familiar with the domestic UK politics in the parliament, whips is otherwise the manager, party manager in the House of Parliament. And they call it whip because there are various degrees of pressure that the party managers can put on their party's MPs' behavior. So it's called whip, like lashing, beating with threats. So the whips are referred to as one-line whip, two-line whips, and three-line whips. It's like the various degrees of the earthquake. And the higher the number, the stronger the pressure on the members of parliament of the party concerned to behave as the leadership wants them to behave. In other words, they are deprived of independent vote, the members of parliament. So there were three-line, two-line, and single line. So this is being done. The widely reported blackmailing of the anti-Boris Johnson members of parliament is being done by the abuse of the whips, that is the managers behaving like thugs. Now I'll go back to the Inner London Education Authority in a minute to describe how the Labour Party on the Inner London Education Authority behaved or allowed the kind of manager. So there was a woman, member of the Inner London Education Authority, Labour Party, and physically she was very, very thin person. And she was thinner than all the other members of the Inner London Education Authority. She was very fragile, literally very fragile. And as I was a member, not on the ILEA, but generally a member of the Labour Party, this woman's name was Jan something. I forget her second name this moment. So she would talk to me, confide into me sometimes some of the pressures that are being put on her by the party management in the Inner London Education Authority, abbreviated to ILEA, Inner London Education Authority. And this woman All I remember is her first name, Jan something. I found her second name, Jan Liderland. So her name was Jan. Either it was a short for Jennifer or something, but her second name was Liderland, Litherland. So Jan Liderland. So Jan Liderland told me, as she was weeping because she was very upset and emotional about the severe traumatizing pressure she was under by the management of the ILEA labor group. And this particular episode or incident that she related to me concerned the behavior of the Labour Party member of the ILEA called Deirdre Wood. Now, Deirdre Wood, in contrast to Jan Liderland, was a woman of physical substance, let's say, put it kindly. And Jan Liderland said that Deirdre Wood would reduce her to tears often. Now, that is the kind of mob and thuggish kind of abuse that party whips are allowed to inflict on party members. So when these people say, as reported by The Guardian, that Johnson is a mobster, well, Guardian and the other papers that are not directly any longer backing Johnson. Now, Jan Liderland, I don't know where she is because I'm talking about what? During the 1980s. So 90s is one decade, 30, more than 35 years or thereabouts ago. Whether she's around or not, I have no idea because I have had no contact with any of them since the ILEA was scrapped by Margaret Thatcher. The ILEA was scrapped by Margaret Thatcher because of the stupidity and lack of political kind of intellect on the part of Ken Lying-Still Livingstone and the cabal of left-wing morons, including John McDonnell. These people behaved idiotically at the ILE and they gave excuse and pretext to Margaret Thatcher and the Conservatives to do away with the Inner London Education Authority, which they did. I shall come back to the Inner London Education Authority again, but I'm now looking at the piece on Friday's Guardian, page 14, which has got a piece under the general section called National. And it's byline to Josh Halliday. And its heading is Robinson pursued for £2 million by creditors after telling libel judge he is bankrupt. Now, this is the reference to the nasty piece of work, Tommy Robinson, who is known as the quote founder of the English Defence League, whose real name is Stephen Christopher Yaxley Lennon. So the piece is the far-right activist Tommy Robinson is being pursued for an estimated £2 million by creditors after Robinson said he was bankrupt during a High Court libel trial. In March, Robinson will be officially discharged from bankruptcy, meaning he no longer has to pay back any debts covered by the filing. It emerged yesterday, that is Thursday, the 20th of January 2022, that creditors have asked an independent insolvency expert to investigate whether Robinson's claim is genuine or whether he is hiding assets to avoid paying his debts. The campaign group Hope Not Hate said it believed Robinson had access to assets worth up to about £3 million through property acquisitions, investments, donations, and book sales. The group said it would supply a dossier of evidence to the new investigation. The Guardian has attempted to reach Robinson for comment. Well, that means that he has not responded to that approach. Nick Lowells, the chief executive of Hope Not Hate, said it is wholly unjust that while his victim's life has been turned upside down, Tommy Robinson carries on his life as before. Robinson claimed bankruptcy in March 2021 during a High Court libel trial brought by Jamal Hijazi, a schoolboy from Syria who was filmed being attacked at school. Shortly after a video of the incident went viral, Robinson falsely claimed in Facebook videos viewed by nearly 1 million people that Hijazi was not innocent, and he violently attacks young English girls in his school. Now, that is incitement of the highest order. The judge, Justice Matthew Nicklin, said the consequences of Robinson's falsehood had been particularly severe for Hijazi, and that the scars would likely last for many years, if not a lifetime. That is, scars on the victim, the target, the Syrian schoolboy that Tommy Robinson libeled, defamed, and incited hatred against. Mr. Justice Matthew Nicklin ordered Robinson to pay Hijazi £100,000 damages plus legal costs. The teenager has not seen a penny, proving to Robinson's bankruptcy claim. No, read that again. The teenager has not seen a penny, owing to Robinson's bankruptcy claim. The investigator has a number of powers, including accessing Robinson's bank and company records, interviewing witnesses under oath, and applying to court for search and arrest warrants. Now, this is not a fascist, and this is not a right winger. This is a plain old anti-Muslim racist agent provocateur who has been created by the Crusader agenda to keep hatred active against Muslims in this society. Now, Tony Robinson and his career as accessible by the published accounts. Tony Robinson is dishonest to the extreme, and he has no evidence on which he says things against Muslims. And the interesting thing, that is the very significant thing about the diagnosis of Fleet Street, the world exclusive diagnosis of Fleet Street, is this: that despite the fact that Tommy Robinson has got widely published inconsistencies and dishonesty and incitement against Muslims, neither the police nor the Crown Prosecution Service nor the Houses of Parliament nor the government of the UK, whatever the name or the gender of the person, kind of in occupation at number 10 as the Prime Minister. So Tommy Robinson, as the hope not hate person, as quoted in the piece that I've just read, Tommy Robinson has got money, millions of pounds, and he's in receipt of donations that have not been actually published in any truthful investigative report, which should be happening. And Tony Robinson has done what Lutfur Rahman in Tower Hamlets had done already. When Lutfur Rahman was ordered to pay the kind of costs and whatever the actual number of the damages to the people who petitioned the election commissioner against Lutfur Rahman as the elected mayor, who they alleged was a crook, not long after that order, dated the 23rd of April 2015, not long after that order, various aspects of Lutfur Rahman's finances were published as part of the coverage of his being the person that had been ordered to pay this money to the petitioners. Lutfur Rahman filed an application and obtained an application saying that he, Lutfur Rahman, was bankrupt. And this has been described as a dishonest tactic on the part of Lutfur Rahman, who, it has been stated many times, after the 23rd of April 2015, that Lutfur Rahman did that declaration that he was a bankrupt as part of his continuing corruption and dishonesty, that he was representing his claims despite being in a state of loss of his resources. And while he did that, he was doing other illegal things in the context of the order by Richard Morey, the election commissioner. And to this day, it is not known whether Lutfur Rahman has paid any of the money, hundreds of thousands of pounds, that he was ordered to pay. If there has been a transaction that I'm not aware of, then I shall, of course, do the fact checking in due course and update update by including the latest evidence, let's say. But as I know, at this time, which is midnight 47 hours GMT, into Saturday the 22nd of January 2022, what has happened is that Lutfur Rahman has publicly stayed silent, and he is still publicly staying silent on all his kind of debts. And this applies similarly to Tommy Robinson, because he's not making any claims about how much money or assets he has. Because the Guardian on page column 2, or the second column of the 3-column piece, merely says the Guardian has attempted to reach Robinson for comment. There's £100,000 that Robinson was ordered to pay in libel damages to a boy from Syria. He, Robinson, defamed online. Now, apart from the kind of tactic, it's a kind of corrupt legal tactic allowed by the corrupt court system and the court bureaucracy for convicted criminals or convicted or parties wrongfully found guilty, declared guilty defamers or others to play this game of claiming that they don't have the money, they don't have assets, so they can't pay the money that they are under orders to pay. That's the similarity of tactics used by Lutfur Rahman as well as by Tommy Robinson. What's his name? Tommy Robinson's name is mentioned always, as his real name being Stephen Christopher Yaxley Lennon. Now, why he doesn't use his so-called real name and why he uses this Tommy Robinson has never been truthfully explained by any of the media outlets. Now, Tommy Robinson came to a point near the Altavali Park, near the boundary of Tower Hamlets, Barra, in September 2013. In September 2013, there was a very small gathering in anticipation of Tommy Robinson's threat to arrive in Tower Hamlets, to march in Tower Hamlets. And the reason why Tommy Robinson reportedly wanted to march into Tower Hamlets was to do with the fact that he, Robinson, belonged to Sussex. No, not sorry, Sussex. It's Luton. And somewhere outside of London, let's say. But his targeting of Tower Hamlets was to do with his claim that it was being kind of targeted by Muslims who were destroying its character. And that's it. The destruction of Tar Hamlers into, as his narrative went, into a multi-racial kind of place was something that he needed to stop. That is, he wanted to make sure that the people of Tar Hamlers were afraid of his kind of threatened march in September 2013. And this is the kind of action that has been mooted, if not actually carried out, by others. And the majority of the racist Fleet Street papers did not describe the racist behavior of Tommy Robinson as racist. Nor does the Guardian of Friday, the 21st of January 2022, have anything to do with the description of Tommy Robinson. They don't refer to him as a racist. They refer to him as a right-winger. Let's check again before kind of moving on to other items. The heading is Robinson pursued for 2 million claims by creditors after telling libel judge he is distraught. Because of the financial problem he has. And many of the crimes that Robinson has been guilty of, has been found guilty of, are not reported by the newspaper, not even by the Guardian. And so, although he's a convicted criminal, magistrates and kind of courts above the magistrates kind of rank have exonerated him in effect and have allowed him to fester in racist behavior. What we shall be doing is going on in more detail during the later editions during Saturday and Sunday. Now, here is Friday's daily Boris Johnson graph or Daily Telegraph, which has got a sick-making piece. It's actually a sick-making piece naming Baby Angel Geronimo. They're not calling him Baby Angel. They're just calling him Geronimo the alpaca. And this person, whose name is given as Judith Woods, makes a mocking comment about Baby Angel Geronimo in the body of the piece. Now, I'm not going to read that piece that is written by Judith Woods on page 21, except to show this to camera to record the sick heading, but the heading is not obviously sick. That is the sick-making face of this woman, Judith Woods, but this is the piece that contains a mocking reference to Baby Angel Geronimo. Now, our campaign, the theme is that the KhoodeelaarTV television channel, the KhoodeelaarTV television channel's broadcasts are done under the theme of Baby Angel Geronimo. And the reason why we call it Baby Angel Geronimo as the theme, is explained every day. One way or the other, we relate to the criminality, the depravity of Boris Johnson's regime with the criminality and demonization and hateful lies and misrepresentations that the depraved UK department, DEFRA, indulged in and made against the Baby Angel Geronimo. Now, why Judith Woods decided to mock Baby Angel Geronimo in this piece is not stated. But as far as we know, there is no campaigner, there is no kind of social media post or blog that is running anything like what we are running. The only person who runs the kind of periodic posts on Facebook and probably Twitter is his human mom, Helen MacDonald. And she does that mainly to do with raising funds and thanking people, etc. But we are the ones that actually run more than one post relating to current events, related to the depraved behavior of Boris Johnson, the criminal, and the government that he fronts. We are the ones who do the daily broadcasting and publishing about Baby Angel Geronimo, defending him, upholding him, supporting him, and updating on the main kind of evils and wrongs done against the Baby Angel Geronimo by the depraved DEFRA and the depraved chief vet, the criminal called Christian Middlemiss, and also aided and abetted by the liar Keir Starmer. And Starmer's frontbench criminal, he was not a frontbencher at the time, but he is now, called Wes Streeting. So we shall be taking a look, longer look, factual, updated look at the depraved behavior of the Fleet Street kind of media and broadcasting counterparts, as well as by the depraved behavior of Ian Pissoff's private lie and the depraved behavior of Dominic Lai's son. Now, Dominic Lai's son is the son of Nigel Lai's son, lies on Nigel Lawson. So we shall be doing the updates on all of those aspects. Now, the latest issue of the Ian Pissoff private lie, which is the serial number, edition number 1565, and dated the fortnight. It's a fortnightly publication, so the fortnight covered is 21st of January, which is Friday the 21st of January, to 3rd of February 2022, which logically would be the Thursday. But it is available in the kind of shops on the Wednesday before the Friday of the date of publication of the particular issue. Now, we are talking about the private lie because its publication, there is a supporting website or blog that serves as a clandestine, that is unnamed or unidentified platform to advertise and promote private lie, where it is claimed that private lie is, of course, the biggest selling magazine in Britain, and it has been the thorn on the side of the establishment. Well, that is what we shall examine by looking at the role of the private lie. And on the evidence, we say that it's absolutely untrue to say that the establishment is kept unsteady by the contents and the role of the private lie. It does not. And we've got a piece in this edition about the Fire Brigades Union. The Fire Brigades Union, it says, this edition says that the current secretary of the Fire Brigades Union is a man called Matt Haque. Now, Matt Haque is the same Matt Haque who used to belong to the Socialist Wonkers Party during the first decade of this century. Whatever his reason for leaving the SWP has never been published to our knowledge anyway. But he was one of the supporters of the pretend left-wing kind of cabal that was forming around George Galloway when Galloway was attempting to launch himself as the left-wing candidate for election as MP at the expense of Bethnal Green and Bow. So Matt Haque was mentioned by the George Galloway kind of cabal for a period, and then they dropped mentioning him. But this item is showing that there has been corruption in the succession and it involved the cancellation of the election on the 1st of December. The election did take place later, and it was won by Ian Sim. Ian Sim is openly critical of the current leadership, was looking likely to beat incumbent Denise Christie, a close ally of FBU General Secretary Matt Haque. That is the person who used to be in the SWP and was quite a few times mentioned by the supporters of George Galloway in the George Galloway cabal for a while until they dropped any references to Matt Haque. As I said, there has been no publicly accessible account that I have come across in the period of the last 16 years or so that says anything about the reason for Matt Haque's departure from the SWP, so this is the I newspaper of 15th, I think, 18th of January, that I'm coming across something about the universities. But mainly, I'm looking at this one on the front page of the I newspaper. Tory angst at Johnson leadership growing. This is again another British domestic publication, regardless of the evidence that it is another corrupt publication in our finding. But this is a rebut or rebuttal or rejection of the line by the second German who has written a letter praising Boris Johnson. Because there will be nobody objectively looking at Johnson and the Conservatives in this country who can write anything like the letters that the two Germans have written appearing to praise Boris Johnson. Okay, so that's the reference to that, and that German and the Matt Haque in the Private Lie. And there are other pieces in Private Lie, and the reason I'm referring to Private Lie is to reinforce the assertion that I made in the last 48 hours as kind of updater assertion. And to say that despite that claim by the clandestine blog promoting Private Lie as the source of threat that the establishment feel against them coming from the contents and the role of the Private Lie magazine. This is not true, because reading the Private Lie for decades, I have not come across one single political or economic kind of event that has been influenced directly by anything that Private Lie has actually published. And the reason why this is so is, and I'm now kind of referring in effect to the late 1980s, let's say second half of the 1980s and the 90s and the 2000 and the third decade now, into the third decade of this century. There is nothing secret, because Private Lie, as epitomized by Ian Pissoff, is another corrupt outlet. And I won't go into item by item, chapter by chapter illustration of what constitutes corruption, except to say that in the references to the various things that they do refer to happening within the court system, the liars don't give you the source. They don't give you the time, the date, the chapter. That is something that is absolutely essential. When you make a reference to a court judgment or a court ruling, you either give the name of the judge or the source, and you give the date most certainly. For example, when we refer to the election petition against Lutfur Rahman, we refer to Richard Mori, who was the chair of the election court. And we give the date, 23rd of April, 2015, when Mori actually published his ruling against Lutfur Rahman. And any student of the kind of law reporting before the Bailey website came along, that is British and Irish legal resource, there is this. What is this called in full? I'll give the full reference again to illustrate how we refer to sources. This is called British and Irish Legal Information Institute, and their website is www.bailey.org. O-R-G. So I'll spell the Bailey, British, A and I, Irish, legal. So British and Irish legal, and the last I is institute, but the I before that is information. So British and Irish Legal Information Institute. This has effectively replaced the absolutely corrupt kind of sources like the weekly law reports and others. When you look at the pictures, the standard pictures of the licensed law trader sitting, you can see the licensed law trader sitting in front of thick volumes. And that is intended to frighten the living daylight out of the ordinary people. It's one of the corrupt things. Let me just what a corrupt image we have here. This is a completely untruthful kind of person that has appeared. You don't want to go into the criminality of this particular individual, but these are the volumes that you can see. These are the volumes that are the thick volumes. And that is the kind of pretension that they have got learning. The learned gentleman more often than learned lady. So they're supposed to be containing their law reports on the volumes and volumes and volumes of legislation, acts of parliament. Now, in the practice, in the reality of the licensed law trade, and the corruption, you don't come across references by the licensed law traders to the laws, to morality, to the treaties, etc., etc. And so private law also makes reference to the very limited number of legal issues, but it never actually gives the reference. You cannot go and look for it. In fact, it goes out of its way to hide the reference so that the reader cannot independently locate and test the referred to item and contents and the assertions. And that is against scholarship, against ordinary accessibility. Access to the law is aggravated. Lack of access, obstruction to access to law is aggravated by private law. And for example, there is a kind of reference to this woman called Aman Alamuddin, who has dropped Alamuddin and has adopted the name of Clooney. Amal Alamuddin has become Amal Clooney. Now, she was identified by a pair of Americans doing some kind of publishing in the UK, who started to kind of rate the sexiest woman barrister. And early on, they identified Amal Alamuddin as the sexiest woman barrister in London. To what extent that attracted George Clooney to abandon his American residence and arrive in London and become her husband, whatever, is not publicly known as far as I am concerned. But what should be publicly known, but is not publicly known, is this. She is referred to as a human rights lawyer. But none of the arguments, none of the actual details, none of the presentation, none of the advocacy, supposed advocacy, is ever published. And it goes on. And goes on as being propaganda for her. And the same thing private law does. It refers to a judge, Mr. Judge, whatever, but it doesn't go into the date, the number of sittings, or the other relevant material facts. It's like rationing access to the facts that they assert, these criminals. So it's anti-democratic and most certainly antisocial. And it's not equal. It is restricted to be accessed by the few, and the many are deprived. Because, for example, this is the one that has been covered by Fleet Street, but even in the first paragraph of I Told You So, the Rotten Boroughs on page 21 of this current issue, it says, last issue's exclusive story about the legal triumph. Remember, we're talking about the law of persecuted publican Jeffrey Monks, who has won a settlement of some 4 million from Northamptonshire Council for a miscarriage of justice dating back to 1999, was widely followed up. Now that phrase, widely followed up, this idiot doesn't even mention followed up by who. Because in the stories that the Daily Mail, the scum, the Guardian and others ran about Jeffrey Monk, they hardly mentioned, they hardly really excessively mentioned the private eye, let alone the crusade and the long history. There have been several, according to this piece, there have been several court cases involving that council and that target, Northamptonshire Council, or the council that was in place. Now they are saying that after being prosecuted 3 times on trumped-up food safety charges by the former East Northamptonshire District Council, which was abolished last year, Monks lost the 3 pups he owned and his home, etc., etc. Now, these are the references, but you have to undertake a research lasting any length of time. Why can't the morons name and date the cases? The other thing about the corruption, why I called the judicial corruption bureaucracy, needs to be qualified by adding the racistly corrupt judicial bureaucracy as well. So what we shall be doing, as we keep saying about particular issues, we shall be devoting longer editions talking about the judicial bureaucracy corruption, the corruption and criminality that are the universities, the British universities, and the crooks who have done the PhDs about Tower Hamlets, and the crook, the criminal liar called Ali Asghar. This criminal boy doesn't realize just what magnitude of criminality he is guilty of, and the University of Birmingham, so-called. These will be world exclusively diagnosed in due course of time, and we shall be doing world exclusively, of course. Now here is this stupid piece in the Daily Mail of Friday, the 21st of January 2022, about Tracy Emin. Now, Tracy Emin is a Turkish Cypriot person. I think her father is Turkish Cypriot, and probably her mother is kind of British, and she was born in Kent, I think. So the mother was white British, whether it's... Now this is Tracy Emin. The Emin is the Turkish Cypriot name. Now Emin became notorious and became an icon in English arts by effectively taking her clothes off and detailing the thousands of people she slept with. Can you imagine? That is the evidence on which she became an artist. And she has got a, what is it called? She has got an MB or OB or whatever. Now she's featuring this week in the papers after she publicized, probably doing a Twitter, Instagram, the claim that she donated one of her, quote, artworks to the British government, which is on show or on a wall in 10 Downing Street. Well, let's see what the quotation here is. Now, John Moore is an idiot. Tracy Emin has not demanded the return of the thing. What she has demanded is that the place where it is being kind of displayed on the wall inside the Downing Street, it should be removed from that place and it should be put in storage among thousands of other undisplayed items that people have donated, gifted to the government. And she said that she's doing that. She's asking for it to be removed from the display because of Johnson's corruption, dishonesty, and lying. She has not asked for it to be returned to her. And yet, this idiot, John Moore, is saying that she has. Now, in the Daily Mail, they say, are you thinking what she is thinking? The Daily Mail promote John Moore as, are you thinking what she is thinking? Now, on the evidence of her thinking, thoughts as published about Tracy Emin, we most certainly are not thinking what she is thinking. In fact, we don't want to think what John Moore is thinking. Now, this is a sample of the lies and dishonesty, ignorance, and lack of depth in the Fleet Street Papers. So, let's read this idiotic piece as an example. Tracy Emin is so furious with the government that she wants the artwork she gifted to them returned pronto. She is not upset with the government, you moron. She is upset with Johnson, the liar. The celebrated artist feels there has been a lack of contrition over the Downing Street Partygate shambles and that they don't deserve her generosity. It's not there, it's Johnson. But can you gift something, then demand its return? She is not asking for its return. So we are not thinking what John Moore is thinking, of course. We are rejecting her. So what we shall be doing, this is the kind of time check, and we're going to kind of close this one is 01:30 hours GMT. So we started, let's say, just under 1.5 hours because started after midnight. So although it's timed 23:58 hours or 23:55 hours, in some parts of the display, we are starting just under 1.5 hours. So we are going to close this one and we shall continue with the new issues and the updates in due course during Saturday. Now, Saturday, being the 22nd of January 2022, will be the start of a series that we are going to publish, both on online, that is social media like Twitter and Facebook, and on this Khoodeelaar television channel. we're taking a contextual updater series since the Sunday, the 22nd of January 2006 rally that took place in the Brady Center in Hanbury Street, which is off Brick Lane, on Sunday, the 22nd of January 2006. Let's see if we can find one picture of Khudeelaar rally. That took place in the evening of Sunday, the 22nd of January 2006. Okay, so this is the back of me. This is the back of me being photographed by somebody. I'll have to fact check and update on this one. So me being on the platform and speaking to the gathering that actually has faces that can be identified. So this is the photograph. Picture of me taken from behind me, and that is the, say, double the image. The same image has been shown there twice. And that was on the Sunday, the 22nd of January 2006. Now that needs to be introduced as follows. That was the kind of most highly attended gathering in defense of the community against the Crossrail hole. And the Khudeelaar campaign is the campaign that stopped the Crossrail hole being dug in the middle of Brick Lane. And it took about 5-6 years, non-stop work. I mean, I'm doing non-stop work now, but it's not on the sole issue of defending the community against Crossrail hole. It's defending the community, defending the values against other attacks, but not simply against Crossrail hole. Now, that was the gathering that would have had about, thousands of people there, but they were not able to get in there because of security. That is the kind of quote statement that was given. The building belongs to the London Borough of Arms Council, and the security person or personnel were employees of the Tower Arms Council. So they gave the reason that there was not enough space to accommodate the many people waiting outside to get in. So let's say it would have been thousands more people there outside. And I was the keynote speaker. Now that is not comparable to the rate at which Boris Johnson or dodgy Dave Cameron or the crooks Tony Blair appear at platforms. The whole movement has been created by me, kept up by me. And I didn't do that because somebody else paid me for doing that. I'm not doing this because somebody is paying me for this, literally. If I were to pay anyone for doing the same thing as I did, I'd have to pay millions of pounds for the work defending the community. Now, Jeff Bezos, the Amazon criminal, is doing the rounds in the news, saying that he wants to encourage research, etc., so that people can find the kind of answer to his craving to live forever. The Khoodeelaar campaign has been behaving as part of the movement defending the community in the East End of London as a kind of comparable source of action that could not be produced by one person and could not be produced without very heavy investment and expenditure. So, as I said, I mean, if I were to claim the rate that Bezos or Elon Musk or Bill Gates or Zach Zuckerberg, Mark Zuckerberg, not Zach, Mark Zuckerberg claim, then I would have to claim more than all of them are reportedly worth, because the consequences, the impact, and the benefit to the community, society, of what I do far exceed all the work that all of them put together do, individually or collectively. So, this is the gathering of Sunday, the 22nd of January 2022. So I'll put this is the picture. This is the picture of me with the cap in front of the camera and the people facing me. And there was pin drop silence when I spoke, and I spoke only a few minutes. And the people who later told me about the atmosphere that they felt, obviously they wanted to please me with that, but that also contained an illustration of the mood of the people. They said that if I just said to the gathering to physically attack the councillors present, then no councillor would be able to leave safely. And I said there was no way that I was going to do that. That is not what I do. I'm a constitutional, ethical, moral activist. I mean, physical encounters I've had, but they're not my priorities, and they're not things that I would do, because physical encounters have got limited impact and implications and consequences. So this main person who told me repeatedly, not once, many times, that you should have told the people to beat up the councillors. I said I'd never do that. So that was the mood according to this person, not me. I didn't even know that he was going to say that. But that's what he said he felt. That people who are going to be doing whatever I would tell them. Now that is fanaticism. I've never done that. I'm not a fanatic, and I don't want to incite fanaticism. It's a rationality that I want to encourage. Now this is the front page of the what was called the Tower Hamlets recorder. This Tower Hamlets recorder had anger of a community. This was Tower Hamlets recorder of the last week of October 2022 that ran this headline, anger of a community. And the East London Advertiser, that is the reference of the name on the record, dated Thursday or whatever the date was. It was the Thursday before the first ever rally against the crossrail hole that we organized in the Greater X Street on Friday, the 22nd of October 2004. Now that was 2 years before the Brady Center rally. But everything we've done in the campaign to stop the crossrail hole and to defend the community against the crossrail hole has been done with the use of resources and strategies and techniques that to be available otherwise, other than me, would have required very significant resources, personnel and resources, other material resources. So what we did on the 22nd of October 2004 in Greater X Street, and what we did on Sunday the 22nd of January 2006, were for the borough of Tower Hamlets, for the area, historic events in that unprecedented events. Let's explain that bit about the council. When we held that demonstration on the Friday, the 22nd of October 2004, we did that by targeting local councillors. Because it was in their council ward that the main targeting of the hole, crossrail hole, was located. So they should never have made it necessary for us to target them as individual councillors. At that demonstration, we didn't just say it's the council. We named the councillors. And the councillors were guilty of stupidity. This is how the main banner looked. The cloth banner, KhoodeelaarTV. I gave the word in the script, and K. Jordan wrote that, or had that suit, kind of sewn, not suit. Now this woman, I don't know her name and I don't know where she came from, but she surfaced in the middle of Brick Lane during one of our many street demonstrations, because we organize street rallies, many street rallies, and people came to the rallies, and most of those who came to the rallies were known to us, except this person. Now she came, and as you can see, she's holding a leaflet that I had created. This kind of leaflet, there were thousands of leaflets like that created every day by me, written and designed and printed by me every single day for 5-6 years. So on that day, this leaflet contained the update of our action at that time on that day. And she came from nowhere. I don't know where she came from. And she picked up the leaflet and she stood there for being filmed. This is a still from the film. I filmed her, and she stood with that leaflet. What did did that particular appearance on the part of this individual added to the kind of multiracial, multi-ethnic dimension? Because most of the other people who are not seen in this image still, but I know who they were, most of them, not all of them, were Bangladeshi people. And there was a Polish woman, and this woman, I don't know where she came from. The Polish woman was temporarily working for me for the campaign. So she was taking some of the pictures while I was doing the speaking. Now, nobody could have organized this person appearing. Because if they don't want to support you, or they don't want to stand in the queue or stand as part of the kind of demonstration or gathering or rally, you cannot make them. So wherever she came from at that moment served as the kind of representation of the whole community, including Asians and Europeans. She was from wherever she was, but I think she was a person from the Eastern European background, and she had a boyfriend or a male companion with her who wanted her to move away from that kind of rally, and she refused to move. She wanted to stay, so she stayed about a few minutes, not a very long time. And the Polish woman, as I said, was working for me on a temporary kind of basis in order to do the kind of errands and do the photography. She's a good photographer as well, so it helped. And I took the picture of this woman. If I'm wrong there, then I'll check the facts and I'll update on the facts as to where this particular video came from, whether I made the video or somebody else made the video with me in it. Now, this was a campaign, therefore, was very much like my great grandfather, the philanthropist, the educationalist, and the saint, Bed Shah. Because, as I said many times before, when people came to our house, wherever he stayed, I mean, I'm assuming where I was born and where I grew up, grateful people came to our house, and as my father's mother related it, they came in their thousands. So whenever he was at home, he would be visited by people in their thousands. There would the lines and lines of people in their thousands. The numbers would be thousands of people in the line, queues. And as I said, the reason why they came, one set came to seek his help, and the other set came to give him thanks for his help that had worked for them. So the first group, that is the group that had come already and had benefited from his help, came to thank him and to offer him material rewards, as I said before. And they would offer him equivalent of land that would be like, if collected over his period, whatever number of years, whether he was in that state for 30 years, 40 years, whatever, I don't know. Because I didn't see him. I didn't even see my father's father, who died before I was born. So it's only mainly from my grandmother, my father's mother. Well, other people gave the kind of supporting statement, but the most substantial information about my great grandfather came from my father's mother. So they would ask him what he wanted, money, whatever, and he said no. So he was uniformly saying no to everything, including material, land. And the value of the land would be, to translate and convert into an understandable kind of pound sterling area, it would be like billions, because there were thousands of people offering big sized landed property to him. The reason why they were so generous in their offers was because he helped them in each case in a life saving way. Somebody who would not be alive had it not been, according to the interactions, without his prayers or without his, whatever else he offered them. So to those people who are their loved ones, the people who have survived and who had actually stayed alive and who had healed, I mean, the material did not matter. They could give anything. And only those who had things to offer made the offers, of course. So I didn't see him, and I didn't even see my father's father, who died before I was born. So it was quite a while, well before I was born. But my grandmother said to me, that is her legacy conversation with me. She said, "You are the exact like your great grandfather. Your mood, your attitude, your whatever else, she said, was like my great grandfather." And, habits, etc., etc. And she said, you're going to be like him. And I take from that what I've been doing with my abilities, my skills, my resources, my whatever, time. And I mean, I'm not as extensive, and the range is not as widespread as his. And the numbers of people that I have contacts with is far smaller, fewer than anything he had. Because he had a name, and people would follow the name and they would come to our house or his house. And I'm not located in one place with a name, but I am kind of mobile, but with the same kind of values, let's say, as commented on and described by my grandmother. And so all the main work that I have been doing has been without any connection with what material return it will bring me. Of course, there is the difference between the basic ordinary things like housing and the basic shopping, and I'm not including those things there. I'm referring to only those tasks that money cannot buy, let's say. So the task of defending the community against the crossrail hole that I'm talking about, the task is beyond any material ability to accomplish. So when I spoke on the 22nd of January, I didn't speak for very long. And I'm saying that this woman appeared from nowhere. I have not seen her since, and I had not seen her before. This woman appeared, and she looked absolutely content to hold that leaflet which she could not understand. I'm absolutely certain, because the Khoodeelaar, the word she could not understand. And I had not seen her before, as I said, because we had many rallies in Brick Lane, in the Brick Lane area. I had not seen her anywhere. And after this particular one, she disappeared and I have not seen her, so I don't know anything about her. What I'm saying is that she was just a one off, and she was meant to be there on that occasion in order to add to the appearance of these people. Because, as I said, the main kind of people that were behind the banner that is not in that picture were Bangladeshis. And the main people who would have been affected because of racism and the racist kind of targeting, if the hole was allowed to go ahead and be dug in Brick Lane, main people would have been Bangladeshis, and she would not physically kind of be affected in the way that the Bangladeshis would have been. So her being there was more of a kind of miracle than it was material. And even the Bangladeshis, majority of the Bangladeshis who would have been affected and who have been benefiting as a result of the stoppage of the Crossrail hole, didn't take part in the day-to-day campaigning. So the gathering on the 22nd of January 2006 was a unprecedented gathering. And we shall be talking more about that. And I shall be talking more about this particular incident on that occasion. Because many people who have looked at this particular image must have assumed that she was part of the day-to-day campaign, but she wasn't. Because the Town Council's leader at the time that we started the campaign, the Khoodeelaar campaign, was Abbas Uddin Elias Halal. Abbas Uddin Elias Halal was an elected councillor from the council ward that contains Brick Lane. And what happened was that since the campaign, the Khoodeelaar campaign, or during the Khoodeelaar campaign, Abbas Uddin Elias Halal and other Bangladeshi councillors who got elected as councillors mainly on the strength of the voting demography containing significant numbers of Bangladeshis in their ward, which is the same case now. Those who actually got the council seats would not be elected councillors without that demographic mixture. And during the council election in May 2006, which happened after 4 months after the January 22nd rally in Brady Center, the electoral strength of the likes of Abbas Uddin Elias Halal was adversely affected. And all the parties contending the kind of election relied on the Khoodeelaar effect. They had to tell the people they were conversing at the doors of whether they stood for Khoodeelaar campaign or whether they supported the council. Everyone said they supported the Khoodeelaar campaign, even these councillor candidates. So it wasn't just a direct kind of targeting of the government against the crossrail hole. It was a phenomenon. The Khoodeelaar campaign became a phenomenon, and it phenomenally affected everything to do with public life in the area and beyond. So we shall be talking on more about this tomorrow, that is already here, that is 22nd of January 2022. And the contrast with the kind of politics that takes place during council elections generally and what we created in defense of the community. The contrast cannot be more extensive. And in creating all of that, in doing all of that, I followed my own judgment. And as my grandmother had said, I was doing, and I would be doing, she predicted, of course, what my great grandfather, the Badshah, would do and had done and was doing in front of her, because she was a child herself when he was active. And so they're all, I mean, he was the most widely known person in the whole region. So everyone knew him. And so my grandmother said to me that you would be like him in personality, in terms of doing the things for society and for people. And I did that on the occasion of stopping the crossrail hole, and I've been doing this same thing in every little separate campaign or project, initiative that I've been doing. The reason I refused to become a practicing barrister in 1973 wasn't directly kind of as a result of my thinking about my great grandfather, but the collection of moral values kind of constituted the background, the context for my saying no. The reason I didn't join the British Civil Service is the same thing. The reason why I refused any offers or possible offers from any government in Bangladesh or in Pakistan before Bangladesh became a country was to do with the same thing. The reason why I could quiz Zulfikar Ali Bhutto in the 1960s and reduce him to tears because I wasn't shouting or making any aggressive kind of statements was to do with the same moral direction that my grandmother said I would be following. The same thing happened with the questions that I put to various prime ministers and leaders of states, including James Callaghan and India's Prime Minister Morarji Desai, and of course the President of Bangladesh, Ziaur Rahman. None of these persons, and this is an example that I interrogated, could answer any of my questions. And people holding lesser positions than any of them, of course, have not been able to give my answers to the questions that I put to them. So, with indescribable amount of gratitude to the legacy left to me, bequeathed to me by the Bed Shah, I'm going to stop this particular edition here at 0207 hours. And of course, all thanks to my grandmother for conveying to me all the treasures of the information and the legacy. May all of them rest in peace, eternal peace. And I shall continue to do my best for as long as I can. Not straying an inch from the line